goodness sake.
What am I missing here? So you know very well people are going to make noise. You know very well people are going to complain about bread because that's the last thing that you tax. But you are doing it so that you put people in this pit hole, all right? You make people jump into a hole. You watch them scream inside there. Then you lift them up for them to praise you. You say, oh, you are so kind, you removed us. You are so nice, you removed tax on bread. It wasn't supposed to be here in the first place. Nobody in his right mind is going to do that right now. So you know very well this is just a political.
What are you saying, Musahi?
I am saying in my mind it was never supposed to be there.
Sure, we can say it was not supposed to be there, but are you saying that it was put there knowing full well that it would be removed?
Absolutely.
In order for this glorification that you're talking about to happen?
I believe it. It is the only explanation. There is no other explanation that I can see. Because you cannot honestly tell me that at a time when Kenyans are crying as much as they are, you go out there and say, guess what? It's not enough that you are crying. I'm going to put some tax on bread. Yep. And you're talking about babies? I'm going to tax your babies too. And women here are screaming and making so much noise about other things. Forget about the dress. I'm going to tax your sanitary pads too. Seriously. And you expect me to believe that this is what you intend to do? I don't believe it. I believe that what you want to do, there is this tendency, this philosophy of put people in the hole, remove them from the hole, and they will praise you. So take us to Canaan. We are in Canaan. Take us to Egypt, so to speak. Take us to Egypt. We'll bring you back from Egypt, and you'll be our Moses. All right. So I honestly believe that there is no way anybody would have proposed those kind of taxes at this particular time. So forgive me if I don't believe it. I just don't see it. I see it simply as a political maneuver. All right. But they have been called out. All right. It has been called out. And I think that next time, and that was an end game. You're talking about end games. To me, that was an end game. It didn't work. I think it has backfired. I think that Kenyans are not going to praise anybody because of saying that you're not going to tax bread. There are some other taxes that are still there, that need to be looked at. And I hope that in the amendments, during the amendments stage of the bill, there will be more amendments that will be made. Now, I want to emphasize that I appreciate that countries must be financed through taxation. But it is important for us to ask ourselves, we are taxing to end where? All right? Where do we want to go when we tax? That's essentially what I'm saying. And therefore, when you see people in the streets, they get it. All right? Not to paraphrase.
They don't get it?
They don't get it. I think they get it.
Yeah.
I think they get it very well and very clearly. And therefore, I think that the generations that we have, the Kenyan of today, is not a person who can be fooled easily. They can see right through your machinations.
Do you think things are changing? So are they different in character that you then cannot continue to deliver government? And I say deliver government deliberately. One of the things that you said that stuck in my mind for a very long time is if you treat this thing normally, it'll then come and treat us abnormally later. That's interesting because you came up with so many things that we can use today. And that, in that instance, you were talking about COVID. But here we are and we're saying, if you take the way the country has presented itself, whereby you have a now woke generation of people who are saying, you know what, we're not just going to take this line down. You have people who've been supporting the cause before who say, no, it cannot continue like this. It has to shift. Do you think that the character of the situation has changed to the point whereby any forward-thinking, leaning government has to take these changes into consideration? Otherwise, it'll turn on its head.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree. You have put it as best as anybody would. You see, every generation is different from the previous one, from the previous generation. And what we are seeing today is a generation that is extremely exposed. When we were growing up, there was only one phone in the village. Somewhere where they used to ring and then you would call the operator and then the operator would call you 2 hours later and tell you whether he has connected you. That's the world we grew in.
My goodness.
These people are growing up in a completely different world altogether. We are talking about a people who are extremely exposed, as I said. We are people who are extremely knowledgeable, much smarter than we were ever were at that age. And for a long time, this is also a generation that has stayed away from politics, that stayed away from public responsibility. And here comes the crunch. They have been pushed and pushed to the extent that they have now clearly realized that it's their lives, that politics is what makes their lives. Like Moi said, siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. It has dawned on them now that it's about us. If we have a poor government, if we have members of parliament who can't defend a budget, then it is we who will suffer. It is our jobs that will go. And I think that realization has pushed them to the point where now they are taking responsibility. What you saw yesterday is part of the process of taking responsibility and taking the bull by the horns, so to speak. That was a very historic and momentous occasion in our nation to realize that people do not need to be led by a famous politician to object to a situation that they don't like. Yeah. And I think that if anybody didn't realize it, if it didn't dawn on anybody, then that person is blind. As blind as you can get. Yes, Wanja.
Can I jump in there? There's something you said that's really provoked me. I was there yesterday in the backgrounds trying to figure out what's happening, just really mystified. I haven't done very many marches. I've done enough in my time. And it wasn't a march. It was just the way Gen Zs do their thing. So it was an amazing energy. And in the process, there were also celebrities on the ground. And when you talk about, we had written off, maybe there was this perception that Gen Zs like the soft life. In fact, there's a song that had come out about soft life about 2 years ago. And the musician who sang that song, Blinky B, was at the march yesterday. So as you said that, I made this association and said, this is the soft life generation. And they've come out and they've said enough with these, this political misbehavior. And I love the character they brought to the march. It's creative. Their communication, you're a communication expert. And we've seen Gen Zs are expert plus. They are explaining the finance bill in 3 short minutes so that anyone can understand. And I was watching the news yesterday, and the commentary from around the country by ordinary Kenyans was so clear on what they want, what they expect, what is wrong. But to the question that Ndu is asking, I think the revolution, because it's a revolution, it's a transformation. It's a social transformation, it's a revolution, one way or the other, because we are moving from one paradigm, one political paradigm to another. This is a political-centric, this is a citizen-centric, is happening. But there are some barriers, and you were talking about jobs. What needs to happen? Because as I was sitting there, I was saying, okay, the youth are ready. I think these youth are ready.
What are they ready for?
And what support do they get so that they can sustain this? Because they are saying, I think they are ready to take the political, to enter the political space, to make political decisions.
Would you therefore say that that's where the real revolution has taken place? Because this was a generation that had shown zero interest in politics. And then suddenly now, not taking interest, they are taking center stage.
And I would say they had shown zero interest because even if you look at the elections registration, the voter registration, we had a large section of youth that did not bother to register. Then another large section did not bother to vote because they were disaffected. So actually their protest had been happening. They were looking and saying, this isn't adding up, and now they've come out. So they are ready.
Would you say that soft life of theirs was affected in some way or the other?
Maybe that's what needed to be done.
There you
go.
Yeah.
And they realized, wait a moment, this thing that I'm ignoring actually affects my life in ways I did not actually...
And look at what has happened.
But isn't there always an opportunity where that iron strikes and then you see that something needed to happen in order for those waters to break through?
I think the following. First of all, let me just emphasize what Wanjiro said about the inertness the ignorance with which the young people have been treating politics. And we've been talking about this for a long time. Some 5 million Kenyans, 5 million people who were eligible to vote did not even register to vote. 5 million of them. 8 million registered but did not even vote. All right? 8 million of them. So you're talking about some 13 million. The President of the Republic of Kenya was voted in with some 7-point-something million votes. That tells you that the non-registered and non-voting people are enough to choose a president themselves. That's
a political agenda.
That's the biggest of the lot.
But what you say is an interesting perspective, because we've had it happening before at the dawn of multipartyism, where you would find we didn't have these laws of 50+1. The president of the day wins with less than 40% of the votes. But they win, meaning...
In fact, sometimes, one time it was 36%.
Yes, one time it was 36%, which means those who didn't vote for you are more than those who voted for you.
How would you know that those who are in positions, and it doesn't matter whatever level, because here we are talking about governance, broad strokes. How would you know, or how would we be convinced that those who sit in positions of government, then are taking these positions into consideration, the voice of the people, the voice of those who are, in young business, the voice of students, at the very, from bottom to top? How would we see? What would the manifestation of that be?
Well, I think the proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating. In this sense, what is it that they want? What is it that the citizens want? If the citizens are getting what they want, if we are moving towards the citizens' common agenda, then yes, that is, we are succeeding in what we want to do. But more importantly, and to the topic of the day, is to realize that now that the citizens, now that the Gen Z and other people, and even older people, are now realizing the importance of the political space in terms of their lives and their lifestyles, I think that one of the things that will come to bear, that must come to bear, is that not only must they be in the streets, which is a good thing because they are expressing their constitutional right. And I think that it's wrong, and I must also say this, it is wrong for the police to interfere with a peaceful demonstration. Gen Zs are not violent. There was no expression of any violence. There was no stone thrown anywhere. And I think that the best that the police should do is to protect the demonstrators and to just govern so that walk along them, do whatever you want, observe the demonstrations, but do not start violence. These are your children. You're starting violence on. So I would say, to a large extent, it's not all the policemen, by the way, who are violent.
Sure.
Because if all the police were violent, then there would have been a melee, a violent melee out there. But I think that those who are violent, and we watch them on TV, should not have done that. Let people demonstrate peacefully. Let them make noise, all right? Noise is a way of expression. And you can't arrest somebody because they are shouting or making noise. And I think one of the things that happened to this nation is that the democratic space has entrenched itself so deeply that there is no amount of violence that can be able to defeat it today, all right? It's going to be there. The second point of this is this. I think that the involvement, to your point, if you really want to see change, the involvement of Gen Z and other younger people, and I particularly want to address the Gen Zs who are in business, because one of the missing links in politics, if you ask me today, is that there are not enough voices talking issues that relate to people's lives. In other words, how informed are the younger people who are pretending to be in parliament, in county assemblies? How informed are they in order for them to create this change? It is not enough that you just put a young person there. The young person has to have the ability and capacity, to inform change. And I think that what has happened in the past, and I hope that this is going to change, is that young successful people see politics as a dirty thing that they don't want to get involved in. All right? That is something. I'm a businessman. And I can tell you, when I was 30 years old, working in this place where we are now, in the Standard Group, I was invited by some 4 wazees in Nyeri County who told me that I should join politics. I told them I have got a very good job at the Standard. You know, I have no intentions of ever joining politics because I'm not a politician. You know, politics is for some other people. And an old man, the late Councillor Kiongo, told me at that point, and I remembered it in 1996 when I was going broke in my business. He told me that you will come to realize one day that these businesses you are so fond of, these businesses that you are doing, will be nothing if the politics is not right. If the politics is not right, these businesses that you are doing, these jobs that you are creating, you'll not be able to create if the politics is not right. And I think that this is what the younger generation must come also to see. Years later, I saw it with my own eyes. I experienced it myself when I was going. When Moi printed money in 1992, when we had hyperinflation,
Right.
the business that I had started, having left the Standard, collapsed. Inflation went hyper. Interest rates went to 46%. All right, and there was no way, unless you are running a cocaine business, there is no way you are going to survive. So, and that was politics, printing of money. You know, so, and why are so we have to come to realize that we want this young generation to produce able people. And how are they going to get involved? I'll propose 3 ways. The first one is that they must identify individuals, and we, older politicians, must participate in this. And you must participate in this city. All right?
Older politicians.
You people who are not politicians must also come to the table and say, I know that this young lady called Wanjiru can do it. All right? But she's shy. She doesn't want to get dirty. She doesn't want to get in there. We must call her in, convince her that you should do it. All right? Gandhi in India, the fight for India and the freedom of India was bought by Gandhi. Gandhi was a lawyer. At some point, when he went back to India from South Africa, he didn't actually want to get involved until the federal lawyers called him and said, no, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be leading the people, not here sitting in a law firm. Okay? And that's what happened. So the first thing is identifying and convincing those people. The second thing to say is that not all young people, not all business people are going to be politicians.
Yeah.
Thank God, you know, not all of them. So that a majority of them are going still to be doing business and creating jobs, which is really what we want. But they must also have their friends, their kin, their people of similar minds, similar thinking, working within Parliament, so that they can support them. So those who are not going to join politics should then provide ideas, should then provide funding, you know, support for those who are going to be in the field fighting for themselves. Is going to do this, which is the third thing. What we are trying to do is raise the level of our politics. All right? We remove gangsterism from politics and raise the level so that people can feel comfortable being in politics. A lot of young ladies, for example, don't feel comfortable at all being in the political space. Why? Because of the gangsterism nature of politics. And I think that we need to raise that level. We need to raise a level of debate, you know, and so on. You know, one of the things that the president said yesterday, and which to a point was true, is that today, everybody is debating about the finance bill.
Yes.
All right? Everybody is debating about the finance bill. Everybody is aware of that there is a debt and so on. I agree with him. Thank God that is happening, because if they want, then you would have passed a bill, you know, that has got some very dirty things
In it.
in it. Having said that, the issue is, even as we pass the bill today, what are we doing it for? What is it we want to do? How are we going to measure the success of the budget that we have put forth? Can we say, how many jobs, for instance, do we want to create by the end of the financial year? So that we can say, we are taxing you because by the end of this financial year, this is a number of jobs
That we will have.
that we want to create. And this is the way we are doing it. We are using duty on manufacturing goods, all right? We are paying pending bills, because pending bills have been there for a very long time. Kibaki time, Uhuru time, and they are still there. But if you can come up with a solution and tell us we are paying the pending bills to the young business people so that they pay,
Yeah.
so that they can create jobs.
But let me ask you this question. You know, your position is a very unique one. Even the time you went into politics and the various things you've done in politics, from member of parliament to being a minister, to being a senator, to being a minister again. Now that you're not involved in active politics, or no, you may be involved in active politics, but you don't have a political seat. When you're in and out of politics, there's knowledge you glean. There's an understanding of certain things that you acquire when you're in there and then when you're out. Why is it that political parties, and you belong to some, why is that we have never seen them nurturing young members of their political parties to do the very thing that we're discussing now? Because then the pool of young people who would have been nurtured, and in being nurtured would have been imbued with the understanding that they in turn, when the turn comes, would nurture people who would carry on the very things we're saying.
Well, Siti, let me first say this. Like Martin Luther King said, it is always the right time to do the right thing. And that's why we are speaking. That's why we are here. That's what we are trying to do now. All right? This is what we are talking about, young people getting involved. I think that, for a long time, political parties in this country have had only one purpose, to go to parliament.
Yes.
To get elected, period. If you ask anybody the difference between Party A and Party B in terms of ideals, in terms of philosophy, you'll find that there is none.
None.
The only different thing I remember is way back in 1997 when the Social Democratic Party, wanted to take space in this country. And we did run a campaign in 97 that had some members of parliament.
It was a good campaign.
With a very clear agenda.
Philosophical.
Objective, with clear policies about the stuff that we wanted to do in this country. All right? And unfortunately, for whatever reason at the time, the party did not grow, the way it was supposed to grow. And I think that if you look at other countries, if you look, for example, just south of us, to Tanzania, the Chama cha Mapinduzi has been there for a very long time. I think KANU would have done it. I think KANU would have been the party that people stuck to had they moved with the times. The problem is that they let a generation go and continued, and then they shifted from an interest in the country to an interest in self. I think that what has happened over the years, and the reason why you find that these parties are not taking deep, very deep, conscious decisions to recruit and to move forward, is that the intention was never that.
Right, from the get-go.
From the get-go. The intention was simply to go to parliament. And then on the next one, you'll get into another bus.
Right.
And then do the same thing. It's unfortunate.
It is.
But that is
the reality
the truth.
of the day. And
that's why we need these new young business people, young philosophers, young journalists, in parliament.
Right.
So that they can make a difference and create some of those things.
And do you think that is because it looks as though, here we're going to go over a few minutes, and it looks as though there is the need to form some kind of gate or cage over new people, as opposed to saying, let's let them find their space. Are we saying that those who've been there before need to show the way to the new ones who will come forward, or are we just going to let them go through and find their way?
I think it's a combination of the two. We need new energy. We need an infusion of ideas, always, all the time. It doesn't matter whether there's a new business. Even this place where we are in, you always need an infusion of new ideas and new business people and new concepts that people have created over time. Because the problem with having been there for a long time is getting comfortable. You get comfortable in your space and you think that things will always be the way they are, which is falsehood. They will always change. There is dynamism in life that you cannot stop. Therefore, I think the answer to your question is that we need new people to come in. We also need some of the experienced people in government so that there is something to learn from. You have got people to gain from. And there is also institutional memory. One of the problems of one of the problems that we have is lack of institutional memory, whether deliberate or otherwise. You'll find that you run a ministry for 5 years. Instead of the next minister coming in and continuing to do what they are doing, they start other things, start writing new papers, start writing new things, whatever, and then 3 years down the line, they move out and another paper starts.
There you go.
This issue of continuity is crucial for development. And I think that, therefore, let's bring these young people in. And when I say young, I'm not talking about people in their 20s or people in their teens. I'm talking about a generation that is there between the 35s and 45-year-olds who are nowhere. They are not participating. And they are able and they are smart and they can do it. These are the people I'm trying to encourage to come in and take their space.
And change things. It's been good having you here. I wish we could do this more often. And it's an open invitation for you to come back. Say yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate